Muslim women have, through the Prophet and through Islam, been empowered. There's lots of laws and lots of hadith which support women's empowerment, and it's really important that women and families know what we are entitled to, and we actually we should practice that within our communities. And at times it does feel that we've actually gone backwards rather than forwards. So this event is really to try and remind us of our rights and also what we are entitled to. And given that it is International Women's Day, it seems very fitting that we're having that debate and discussion this evening. So with that, pass on to Bana.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me clearly at the back? Sadia? Yeah. So we have to start with, obviously, our mirror pool. This is one of the nicest shots that I've seen of our city centre. A considerable amount of money was spent on this recently. Does anybody know exactly how much was spent on our Bradford stats? For those of you that aren't familiar with them, most of you are Bradfordians. How many of you are not Bradfordians? Okay, so it's worth going through the stats. So the 531,200, that was in 2016, the Office for National Statistics. We do estimate that that number is slightly higher, probably around the region of 537, 38,000. Muslims account for 24.7, I think that's about 24.9% of the population in Bradford at the moment. We frequently ask our local authority to give us statistics on how many Muslim women specifically live across the Bradford district. And unfortunately, we never quite get an accurate stat on that. So we've kind of guessed, this is all guesswork, but I think we're as correct as we can be. So we're estimating that we've actually got around 70,000 Muslim females living in Bradford. And for those of you that don't know, Bradford has got the fastest ageing population and the fastest growing young population outside of London. So we've kind of got our odds stacked on both sides before. The other strand of work that we do is the Women's Circle. That's been up and running for about 2 years now. We just recently hosted 2 women in Bradford, one who's terminally ill with stage 4 cancer, Shabnam Khan, for those of you that know her, PC Fiz Ahmed, who's recently recovered from breast cancer. Both women were talking about their experiences, and we plan to do a range of different health awareness events over the course of the year. Muslims are the second largest faith-based community in the UK. Over the past few decades, the UK has seen massive, major demographic, social and cultural changes, with Muslims being at the heart of critical debates, whether that be around mainland, global security, counter-terrorism, integration, immigration. The list is endless. We know that we're kind of out there, and we're, to a certain degree, a narrative is being created in the UK of us and them. And what we need to do, and what we're trying to do at the Muslim Women's Council through all of these projects, is actually change that narrative wherever we can. When things go wrong, it's women who are at the receiving end. When it comes to divorce, why are we doing the roadshow? Sorry, I'm skipping that bit. So we've been asked for the last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, what is the roadshow all about? Didn't you host one previously? What's the roadshow all about? So what we've been saying is, and what we stick to, is that when it comes to divorce, women in unregistered marriages are often left without rights afforded to them in a British court of law. The law states that Anglicans, Jews and Quakers have to register their marriages. Were you all aware of that? Yeah? Solicitors are nodding at the front? Yeah, okay. Surprisingly, Muslims are not. And in the last 5 years, they have become increasingly unlikely to do so. So when things go wrong, it's women who are at the receiving end of this. With the steep climb in the number of unregistered marriages, it has never been more critical to have this conversation. And Anna's doing a fantastic job up and down the country. She's got a full-time job as a solicitor, but her heart and her soul and her passion is with this to ensure that women know about their rights. All of those people living together without a registered marriage, whether of all faiths, of no faiths, it's vital that these conversations take place. So at the Daughters of Eve conference, the conversation that we had with Anna was women only, and we felt it was really important to actually open that up to men, because we're kind of, to a certain degree, preaching to the converted, so it's important that men actually are privy to these discussions. So it's only befitting that a Muslim woman like Anna, a specialist in bridging the gap between English law and Islamic law, she's been doing that for the past 25 years. Anna has played an active role in interfaith dialogue and community affairs all of her working life. And she also stood as a parliamentary candidate in 1997 for Ilford South for the Liberal Democrats. She's married and she has 2 children. And I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to stop there and hand over to Anna. If we can all give her a warm round of applause, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me at the back? Assalamu alaikum and welcome. So good to see a mixed audience of ages, genders, and interests. So that you're not all lawyers, you're not all women's activists, you're all doing different things, which is excellent. This is what we wanted. So that's one of the reasons for me to be back here in Bradford. That's what happened. But then 2008, there was research that showed more than 50% of the Islamic divorce applicants to Sharia councils were not even registered. So that was a bit of a concern. I publicized that this is actually rapidly growing. It's not getting better, it's going up. And in 2012, the Ministry of Justice, under Theresa May's request, the then Home Secretary, started a Muslim Marriages Working Group, and we became a part of that and formed a report which said, you must change the law to update the law to protect Muslim women. But there's no change. As you can see, 2017 was still in the same position. My estimate is about 100,000 plus minimum are in that position. And you might say, how do you know? There are no statistics. Well, these are my own estimates. I don't have any other option but to make my own estimates based on 3 million Muslims in the UK. Even if you took a few percent, like 3%, I think you can work out that that's 100,000 straight away. So you've got masses of Muslims in a young population vulnerable to this in the future. It's actually going up, not down. And university research has been commissioned and will be published hopefully in the summer, so we can look at that in more detail. So what's the position? Why is it called a non-marriage? That's an awful insulting term, isn't it? That your nikah is a non-marriage in the eyes of the law. What does that even mean? Well, in recent marriages, I think over 80% of nikahs are unregistered. That's what's happening in today's day and age. In 21st century Britain. Some communities, 95% plus. So, for example, Somalis or Sylhetis, some Mirpuri communities will tell me that most marriages that we go to that are nikahs have not been registered. And I think you'll find that that is your common experience. I'm seeing lots of nods because you all know that's true. Okay? Hindus, Sikhs are registering their marriages. They're small communities of about 300,000 in some cases. They can be controlled very well. Small communities like Ismaili Muslims are 100% registration. It's where you've got a strong leadership, it's working. But 3 million population, 30 countries plus in the UK, no leader, what do you expect? Everyone is doing their own thing. Well, the government got very complacent and relaxed because they said to me, oh, don't worry, you're just over-worrying. 1 in 10 mosques are registered. So don't worry, it will only get better. Then everyone's going to just register, it will all go away. But then I pointed out, even the ones that are registered to perform the marriage are not actually doing the registrations. They're not doing the paperwork. Isn't that even worse? For a woman to think she's married legally in an authorized place, and then the certificate was never filed. So it's almost like a duty of care, which is a legal term, being breached. And as people will say, that they are remedies, legal remedies, and this just should not be happening. There should be no secret or unjust marriages. This sounds radical, doesn't it? But it was introduced by Islam 1400 years ago. It's not happening now. So are we going to make a change? Yeah? Are we going to do it? If we want to, we're going to march on Parliament if we have to together, and we'll get some coaches organised for Bradford. And would you join me? I think you would. It sounds like there's lots of people here who are ready to go. Let's do it. Okay, thank you. Lovely.
Okay, now I'd like to quickly introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mohammed Siddiq Patel. He previously worked as a legal advisor to a Sharia council in the north of England. He currently works as a family solicitor for Cameron's Solicitors in Leeds, and he's also part of the ROM campaign. So can we have a round of applause for Mohammed Siddiq, please?
Good evening, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. It's nice to be here. Thank you all for turning up, and it's nice to have such a good turnout. And first of all, thanks to Anna Khan for organising this and getting us all on the bandwagon to do this. It's not before time that this needs to happen. and also to Ban Agura of the Muslim Women's Council for organising this wonderful venue, and of course everybody at the Mercure Hotel. It's a religious issue and it's a legal issue as well. I first came across this discrepancy, this inequality you could call it, when I used to advise a Sharia council here in the north of England on a voluntary basis, on a voluntary capacity. The inequality of the situation, it became apparent to me really quickly, because you had lots of Muslim women coming into these Sharia councils, and after the process going through to its end stages, the marriage being dissolved from an Islamic point of view, and only learning that the marriage was done from an Islamic point of view just on its own, and there was no civil marriage. As I developed my expertise and experience as a lawyer, I found out that this was not a legal marriage. So you had the situation, as Anna has so eloquently put it, where on the drop of a hat, you'd have a marriage subsisting one night, something happens, and then the next day, or that very same night, the door is locked and the woman is not allowed in. Funny story today, I was drafting this speech, and I gave it to my colleague to type up, and then she came and sat with me in my room, and first time she told me about what happened in the past. And she told me that this is exactly what happened, and that one day I was not allowed into the house, and it was pack my bags and off you go the next day. So she said, carry on, and this is fantastic work that you're doing. As I became more experienced in this field, different types of problems, as Anna's already pointed out, one of the more serious ones, they're all serious, is when the second marriage takes place, often in secret. Islam places great criteria, very exact criteria on marrying more than one woman. And even then, there has to be complete transparency. So we have to ask ourselves the question, if this is the theory, then where is the practice? And that brings me on to the campaign. This is why this campaign that Anna began and spearheads is something which I've joined and fully back. Because for me, it's about education. It's about educating ourselves, men, women, Muslims, non-Muslims. This is something which should apply to all faiths, not just the Muslim faith. That's why it's called the Register Our Marriage campaign. I think if we educate the people, if we educate ourselves, if we change the mindset of the community, we can hopefully change the culture that we operate in. And if we can change the culture that we operate in, then hopefully, just as in this day and age we have in Islamic marriages, for example, where the thinking is that, okay, the rishta or the arrangement has begun, and we need to get the nikah done straight away. Hopefully one day we'll get to a thinking where it's not just the Islamic nikah, that the parents of both parties, and indeed both parties, will say, well, this can only go forward if we have the Islamic nikah and it's registered. So thank you very much, thank you for listening, and hopefully we can bring about a change in the law and bring about a change in everybody's mindsets and culture as well. Thank you.
Our final speaker I'd like to introduce, who's joined us all the way from Liverpool today. He got here before half of you, actually, so you did quite well getting here on time. Neil Addison is a barrister from Liverpool. He writes about religion and law. Can we show him a warm round of applause?
My mother was a registrar at my church. She did that after she retired. She was a teacher. And it was a job that she did voluntarily. She got trained by the registrar. Then, when there was a marriage, she would attend, sign the forms, let the priest do the priestly bit. She just signed the forms and sent them off. So if there are mosques here which are where imams are worried about filling in the forms, or they don't have the time, they can look to members of the congregation, men or women who may be retired or maybe have other skills or experience, who are willing to do it. It's not that complicated. So there is no reason, in terms of religion, in terms of practicalities, why a marriage can't be registered. And so the question then comes around, why, it seems to me, why would anybody not want to register their marriage? And I've got to say this, basically, speaking as a man, why would any decent, honourable man not want to register their marriage? Not want to ensure that their wife is recognised in law as their wife, is recognised to get all the rights and privileges and status that gives. There is no reason. religiously or otherwise. But I think it goes beyond that. It is a societal thing. Marriage has an importance. It has a status in society. I think religions, whether it's Catholic, Muslim, whatever, we emphasise family. We emphasise the importance, stability of families. We emphasise the importance of respect for marriage and what that entails. And so I think it's important that if there is a problem within the Muslim community about registering the marriages, that is addressed and faced up to. Because technically at the moment, you know, you see all these statistics saying, there are so many people in Britain cohabiting. Well, actually, an awful lot of them are yourselves. All Muslims who are, they would say, married, but who have not registered their marriage, are down in the statistics as just cohabiting. There isn't. But it is important that this issue is addressed for the benefit, I think, of society as a whole, of which we're all a part. Whatever religion we are, we're all part of this society. We want stable families. We want stable marriages. And registering them, getting that recognised in law by all of us, is important. Thanks very much.